Hello and welcome everyone. And thank you for joining us today for the New Mexico Weather Outlook webinar series. My name is Joel Lisenby. I'm the Regional Drought Early Warning System Coordinator, Information Coordinator for NIDIS. NIDIS is the National Integrated Drought Information System. It's NIDIS's mission to help the country move from a reactive to more proactive approach to managing drought risk and impacts. And you can learn more about NIDIS at drought.gov. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few quick logistics. First of all, everyone is muted in this webinar, and this webinar is being recorded. The recording will be shared with attendees and will be made available on the Quivira Coalition website and the NIDIS YouTube channel. The format for today's webinar will be a presentation by Dr. Dave Dubois, who I will be introducing shortly, followed by a short time for questions. With a group this large, we've found that questions go smoother if you will please type your question into the question box. So feel free to enter your questions as we go along, and then at the end of Dave's presentations, the questions will be moderated by Leah Potterwaite, who I will also introduce shortly. I would like to acknowledge that the land that each of us is on today is the ancestral land of tribal and indigenous cultures, and I pay my respect to their elders and chiefs, both past and present, and I welcome all tribal and indigenous peoples who are joining this webinar today. This webinar series was made possible by the following partners: Victoria Atencio from Santa Ana Pueblo Department of Natural Resources, Ariel Quintana and Leah Potterwaite from the Quivira Coalition, Helena Deswood from the USDA Southwest Climate Hub, and Dave Dubois from the New Mexico Climate Center. Our contact information will be at the end of the presentation today. Please feel free to reach out to us with questions or suggestions for future webinars. These monthly webinar presentations provide information on current and upcoming weather and climate conditions in New Mexico, with a highlight on conditions on tribal lands. Throughout the summer, we've been hosting these webinars on the fourth Thursday of each month. We began back in May, and today will be the last of this summer series, but we will continue to hold webinars on special topics as we see the need. And the first of these will be a webinar on the impacts of La Nina across the Southwest. This is currently planned for October 22nd at 10:30 Mountain Time, and more information will be coming in an email as that event gets closer. We have a few events to announce for you to mark your calendar with, and that's on the next slide. Dave, if you could go to the next one. First is Regenerate 2020, Resilience in Times of Uncertainty. This is a virtual conference that will be hosted by the Quivira Coalition, with events running from October 26th to November 20th. And for more information, you can go to www.quiviracoalition.org and find the Regenerate 2020 button up at the top of the page. Also, the Soil Health Tech Tools Watch Party on Rangelands Analysis platform. This will be held on October 14th and 28th at 5:30 to 7 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. And for more information for this event, go to the quiviracoalition.org website and look for the workshops button at the top of the page. Also, there's a Rangelands Precipitation Monitoring Workshop, and that's planned at the Santa Ana Pueblo for fall 2020, so a year from now, and we hope that this will be in person. Information about this workshop will be coming soon to the Quivira Coalition events page, or you can sign up for the Quivira newsletter, which would be very useful. I would now like to introduce and welcome our speaker. Dr. Dave Dubois is the state climatologist for New Mexico and the director of the New Mexico Climate Center and associate college professor at New Mexico State University. He provides climate and climate change information and education to policymakers, the agricultural community, industry, educators, students, and the public. In addition, he also gives numerous talks and holds workshops every year on topics covering climate, drought, air quality, and climate change. Dr. Dubois teaches and trains students at New Mexico State University and maintains an active research program in air quality and climate. He also chairs the New Mexico Drought Monitoring Work Group. Dave is a native to New Mexico, but he grew up on a farm in southern New Jersey. Following Dr. Dubois' talk today, the Q&A will be facilitated by Leah Potterwaite, Education and Outreach Coordinator at the Quivira Coalition. The Quivira Coalition fosters ecological, economic, and social health on Western working landscapes through education, innovation, and collaboration. And so without any further ado, I will pass over to Dave. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Joel. And just one last sound check. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, coming through loud and clear. Thank you, Dave.
All right, let's roll. Go to the first slide here. And so we're pretty much like Joel mentioned, this last webinar of the summer series here, and just providing some information. I'm going to first cover September, then we'll look at some numbers for the whole summer. So September wasn't didn't really deliver much either. So if you were in a few areas, this is the percent of average rainfall for the Southwest. A few showers went through an area near Luna County and going up to Sierra. Very dry, really nothing going on in the southeast. A few showers up in the northwest. I saw some precip amounts at El Vado and Heron, but pretty much everywhere else it's down to less than 50% of the average. And that's not only the story, but that the western third of the state has been above average. However, we've gotten some backdoor cold fronts cooling on the east side, which is great. But however, this is mainly just for September. We've had some, at least for New Mexico, August was the warmest on record. It was also the second driest. And then looking at the preceding few months, July and August was the second warmest. June, July, August was second warmest. May, June, July, August was the warmest. And going from April to August was the warmest on record. And then July and August was the fifth driest. June, July, August was the second driest. May, June, July, August was the driest on record. And then also April through August was the driest on record. So the story is not only the lack of monsoon precipitation, but and it's very much related. The temperatures were near record warmest throughout the whole summer for most of New Mexico and Arizona as well, and even further west. So so we've gotten some pretty drastic numbers in terms of what we're looking at in terms of impacts. I just want to point out, we've been looking at Clayton over the past summer, and this one area is probably one of the only areas in New Mexico has actually gotten some precip. So this is what we call the monsoon period. It's from the middle of June through the end of September, and so this is accumulated precipitation is the green, and then the long-term average, the climate normals, is that nice smooth line. So as you can see, we're pretty much right at the normal, the average. So it's only about a third of 3/10 of an inch above the average. However, you still got to consider the long-term complications. We've only had 5 inches last year. This year we've had 8. So there's still some issues with longer-term drought, even in Clayton, where they've had near for the whole summer average precipitation, but not so much for other areas. So we'll look at other areas. If we go further south, southwest from there, the Alcalde. Very dry. They're nearly 3 inches behind for the summer. They've gotten 2.35 inches this summer, and only 4 inches last year, 4.16. And over last month, they've recorded 0.84 inches. So you can see the deficits in that graph there. So you can see how much rainfall they've missed, and they've had a really dry spell from toward the late July all the way through clear through the first week of September, and they've got one rain event, but boy, that was not much. Going further south in Los Lunas, the Ag Science Center there, same time period, calendar year at 2.53 inches, so that's almost 2 inches below average. Last year they've only had 2 inches, so there's that recurring theme there 2 years in a row. Just looking at last 2 years, deficits there accumulating, and then just over an inch over the last 30 days. But there's some impacts from drought over a longer period of time, not just the summer. Going further all the way toward the Colorado border in Dulce, current calendar year, actually it's not the calendar year, but the monsoon period is 4.43 inches, and that's 2 inches below average. We had almost 5 inches last year, and over the last 30 days, we've had just over an inch of precip. And the last look at a station in Farmington, I'll make the corrections here later with if you want, but that the monsoon period, June 15th through yesterday, is 1.65, and that's 1.45 inches below average. And look at last year, it was it was really dry last year, 0.91 last year. So you can see that area between in the middle toward the last end of July all the way through the beginning of September, very dry period, and I've only had one significant rain event in right around September 10th, and less than ½ inch in the last 30 days. So some large deficits all over the state. I could pull up a lot more, but this is sort of a kind of a sign just to show you what the monsoon has been in terms of non-soon and non-delivery for New Mexico, and very similar for Arizona. In a few areas even worse in Arizona. So as we've been looking at Streamflow, and I've picked the last 28 days of Streamflow in 4 different locations. On first one, upper left, the Animus at Farmington, the gauge there. The triangles are the long-term medians over 96 years of data. And then the squiggly blue line is the actual discharge measurements at that gauge. As you can see, where we've been below average, we're nearly only 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 or so cubic feet per second. We should be around 300 at this time. Looking below that graph on the bottom left, the Pecos, just above the Santa Rosa Reservoir, long-term medians, 44 years of data. This time of year, we basically get the meltdown has gone through, usually get around 20 to 30 CFS. We're down into about 5 CFS. So there's a little bit wetting, but it's pretty much out of or below average and out of water there. Upper right, the 2 right side graphs are the Rio Grande. The top one is the Embudo station with 89 years of data. The triangles are right around this time of year, about 300 CFS, and the last gauge reading was about 150 or so, just a little bit above that. So below average. And then further south downstream on the Rio Grande and the Albuquerque, the gauge there, this time of year we should be getting about 400 CFS, and we are around 112, 115 CFS at the Rio Grande Albuquerque station. So pretty much all the gauges are running below average. I mean, this is time of year. The irrigation seasons are about curtailing. I know the lower Rio Grande in Elephant Butte Irrigation District, they just turned off the transfer water from Elephant Butte to Caballo. And I was just making some stats yesterday on the amount, and it was like 82, somewhere right around 82,000 acre feet, and it was the second lowest that we've had in terms of at the post irrigation season in the last 20 years. So remember, we've had a really wet period in the 90s. We had basically Elephant Butte was filled to capacity, and then ever since then we've gone into this dry period, and we've dipped down, and I think it was 2018 we've had our record lowest, and right now we're right around 4% of the capacity of Elephant Butte Reservoir, and it's kind of telltale in terms of our snow water equivalent from last winter, as well as the intense heat with a lot of evaporation and a lot of loss due to the heat. So here's a graph that shows a table actually that shows the reservoir volumes. We just got this week. We had our state drought call from the Office of State Engineer. I highlighted the current reservoir numbers there, and those are units of thousands of acre feet. So pretty much every reservoir in New Mexico are below average, and so you can see even Navajo 1166 and on the average is about 1,400. So So that kind of gives you a clue on kind of the impacts, not only on temperature, precipitation, but also on surface water amounts. And we'll go look at the other parts of the ecosystem. So in terms of soil moisture, this is a map graph from the NASA Sport Group, and they provide model runs every day on column soil moisture percent, and they do it to compare this month change since last month. And you can see areas, there's a few areas where we've seen some precipitation where the soil moisture is improved just a little bit over the last month. But areas over in Catron County and even over in the Northeast, we've seen some drying out. We've had some good rains earlier in the summer, but some of these areas have started to dry out, and we still continue to see drying in the east part of the state. Other than the areas up in the Rio Riba, they've gotten some precip there, but it's been bad. And if you look further out in time in the past, like 6 months, and that's kind of where we really see our impacts. If you look at the whole summer season, not just 1 month, but just looking at the percent change. So if you look at the colors and you look at the legend on the bottom to see what the colors mean, there's some areas in New Mexico, like especially over in Catron County, under a 20% change of drying out, less column soil moisture than the other 6 months. So very dry, and I mean we're seeing it all the way across the southeast as well as in north central, in the southern part of Taos into the northern Santa Fe County, San Miguel. There's an area there where it's been pretty dry, as well as in Socorro County, and the very south part of Torrance has been pretty dry there. So it's kind of this, I mean, it kind of makes sense. You know, we haven't got precip. It's been very hot. We're seeing some really drying out of some of our areas, and also the vegetation has also been responding. Looks really bad. I mean, this is the veg dry that came out September 20th. Most areas, they're in that moderate to severe, and a few areas are in extreme drought. According to the vegetation condition. If you're in that near normal to pre-drought, there's a few. Yellow is that pre-drought, and I mean if you're in, that's probably the best case scenario for a lot of areas, other than a few little where rain has fallen over the last few weeks, but not looking good. So this is the COCORA's condition reporting. This is the latest map. I just pulled this out last night, showing the last week's drought monitor as the background, and then the reports from our observers and folks who are out there and across the Southwest providing some reports of what they're seeing, and it's sort of confirming what we're seeing in the drought monitor. We're seeing a lot of areas that are moderately dry, and then there's a bunch of areas reporting seeing severely dry, and so we're using these to help guide us. Myself and the National Weather Service provide input to the U.S. Drought Monitor, and we do that on a weekly basis. So if you're a COCORA's observer, we would appreciate you spending time and type up a condition report so we can add that to our map to kind of get a confirmation of where things are and how things are looking compared to other weeks or even throughout the whole summer. That would really be helpful. And so we've been looking at this product called Grasscast over the course of the summer, and this is the last map of the season. So this is basically the estimates of the peak standing biomass for the whole summer growing season. So there's basically, we looked at different scenarios of above average and below average precipitation, what the amount of grassland productivity. And this is sort of the kind of it really makes sense. We've been looking at this, and we're seeing the below average precipitation throughout the summer. And you can see the colors and then the percent down on the bottom left of this graph. The areas, the red is that less than 30%, so loss of 30% change in the grassland productivities for most, I would say about almost 50% of the state, and then large parts of the other parts are around 15 to 30% loss in the productivity. Only a few areas in Union County where we saw some, basically looking at that one of those first graphs I showed, the accumulated precipitation since June 15th, they're right around normal. So it kind of makes sense in that area. But if you go, there's a pretty sharp gradient as you go west and south. You go into that loss. You know, even that yellow is not a good sign. So very, very isolated, as well as a little area in the far western Torrance County. That's over in the Manzanos. But other than that, we expect to see, you know, it's a confirmation of what we're seeing from some of the conditions, even the USDA agricultural statistics showing a shortage of forage. Folks are reducing herds and things like that, or, you know, this kind of makes sense. So this is this morning's U.S. drought monitor map. Not a lot of change since last week. We've actually increased the D3 expanse in Santa Fe County, and then in a little bit of change over in the east, in the southeast side, and a little increase in the D2. There's still a lot. I mean, there's really not much going on. So in terms of precip, so we don't expect any improvement, at least right now. So let's look at the outlook. So let's, the rest of the talk here, we'll look at the outlook. So for a seasonal outlook, we get our clues from the tropical Pacific, and over time we've seen a cooling of the central Pacific, and that's that little shaded area. I mean, a dashed area, and that map says Nino 3.4. That blue is indicating a cooling of the central Pacific. Once we see that, that's kind of a light bulb turns on and say, oh, we need to start looking at a possible La Nina. And what do you know? We were in a La Nina watch, and actually we're in La Nina conditions right now. And so we're tracking that, and that's kind of what the focus of our talks now. And then the one on the next month on the 22nd is going to be more detailed this. But I just want to give you a sense of this is what we're looking at. The probabilities going up from now all the way through the spring. The blue bars are the probabilities of the La Nina. So right now we're about 70% probability it's there, and then it's going to increase to a little more than just shy of 80% probability through October, November, December, and it's going to last through the winter at more than 50%, and going all the way out to February, March, April. Will still be sitting in a La Nina. It's currently a weak La Nina. We're still waiting to see how things develop in the tropical Pacific. Is it going to get any cooler than it is now? That we've been relying on some of our models and our satellite observations to give us some input on there. But regardless, it's here. It looks like it's going to stay, and we're looking at the outlook to see what are the impacts of that. So short term, basically there's nothing going on. There's maybe a few clouds in the higher elevation. There's a little spot in the Gila. You may get some showers there, but the rest of the state, all of Arizona, Utah, Colorado, Nevada, and most all of California are dry through the end of this month. So basically our monsoon is done. We're looking at the fall now. The weather patterns are starting to shift, and we're getting more northwesterly flow as opposed to these southerly flow. We're seeing some transition in our weather patterns. And so we're going to look at some of these outlooks. So this is 6 to 10 day. The left side is the temperature probabilities, and then the right side is precip probabilities. So basically, there's a line at the southern Great Plains. If you're east of there, it's going to be cooler, and if you're west of there, it's going to be dry, warmer than average. And on the right side, pretty much most of the U.S. is going to be below average precipitation. We're sitting in New Mexico, and most of Colorado are sitting in the 40% probability. And just going north of there, the Great Plains into the higher elevations of the Rockies, even a little less. Going a little further out through the first week of October, pretty much same story. If you're west of the Rockies, and you're basically in the warmer than average, not looking good for fires. However, the precip is also looking at drier than average. However, it is sign says neutral, normal over on the far southwest, Pacific Southwest. So maybe there's some chance of getting some precip there. I'm not very hopeful on that, but there's possibility. Let's go a little further out, 3 to 4 weeks. The whole country looks like it's going to be above average, and Arizona 70% probability of above average temperatures. So you're socked in, pretty high probability. Good if you're a betting person, you're going to bet for really good probability of that. Going to be warm over the October 3rd, basically the second week in October. It's likely going to be dry for most of the country through the second week in October, more than 50% probability there. So let's look out further, a monthly. What's the October going to look like? Kind of similar to the maps of previous weeks, above average temperatures, below average precipitation. Southern Great Plains more likely drier than other areas through the eastern side of New Mexico, Texas Panhandle, most of Oklahoma and southern Kansas going to be likely dry. If we go out further into the late fall and early climatological winter, New Mexico is right in the heart of that higher probability of temperatures, and so more than 70% probability, just like Arizona was earlier. So we're in the heat of that, in the heat literally. And over, if you look on the right side, below average precipitation probability, 50%. So more likely in the southern part of the state and into most of Texas. So that's sort of that's getting into the classic look of a La Nina. You see the jet stream basically moving further north. We're seeing the higher above average precipitation probabilities in the Pacific Northwest, going all Oregon all the way to Montana, and then dry and warm in the southern tier states. So that's sort of that's the pattern of a La Nina. So if you want to go skiing, your best chance is further up north. And then if we can look at the winter time, based off of the forecast from this month, very much a classic La Nina. Left side, really warm on the southern tier states, all the way from Arizona through the Caribbean, and then on the right side, that's a very classic dry, all the way through the same states, southern tier, below 50% below average, 50% chance of below average, all the way through Florida. So that's kind of where we're seeing, and then the northern tier states where the storm tracks are likely going to hit more, and then in the north part of the country, all the way from Washington all the way through the Great Lakes. So that the official forecast from the Climate Prediction Center are pretty much saying this has a flavor right now of a classic La Nina. I don't know in terms of the intensity of it, we have to look a little further than that. Maybe we can talk about that on the 22nd of next month when we go into more depth. So this doesn't bode well for drought in terms of any improvements. Basically, it's the opposite. It's the flip side of that. It's just going to get worse. So the areas that are chocolate brown, basically you're socked in. Is really the persisting of drought. And if you're in that yellow areas, it's large parts of the Southern Great Plains and all the way into the high plains, you're likely going to develop drought, and as well as in Southern California, which is not good for the fires there. I mean, wintertime is there. That's the time it's cooler, and you're going to likely get more rainfall. But however, the patterns are not looking very good for that. So again, not very good news. However, but if you're in the farther north, good news for those guys. If you're in the La Nina, usually the higher chance of above average in the Pacific Northwest and lower probabilities in the southern. So we're looks like we're stuck in that pattern for this coming winter. I don't have any information on the after next year. We'll have to wait. Our skill gets lower as we go through the spring. So, but that's kind of the big thing for now, is be prepared for below average precip, warm temperatures again for this winter. And for that, I'll give the reins back to y'all.
Thank you so much, Dave, as usual. Really thorough, really interesting. And now I invite everyone in the audience to please share in your questions. You can type them in the question box. You can type them in the chat box. If you raise your hand, I will see you and I will try to unmute you. So there's a bunch of different options there. I have a question here to start us off. Dave? Thinking about this summer's drought, does it fit into a pattern of increased weather variability due to climate?
Helena, Joel, Victoria.
Can you hear us? Dave?
You guys there?
Dave, can you not hear me?
Whoops.
Yeah, we're here, Dave. Can you hear us?
Yep, sorry about that. My speaker turned off. I had the same problem in my class. My speaker turns off. And it's like, where are you guys?
We're here. All right, so we got first question here, Dave, which is thinking about this summer's drought, does it fit into a pattern of increased weather variability due to climate change?
Yeah, there's actually a really nice discussion on the Albuquerque National Weather Service. Andy Church has put together some nice graphics, and basically he was looking at the fingerprint of climate change on our the semi-permanent high that sits over on the western U.S. And that's kind of our problem. We've had a really deep, very thick, warm, high pressure system that sits over there, and it's blocking all the other patterns. And we need to, for the monsoon, that's okay. We need to draw the we need to have it in a certain location so it basically draws in moisture from the either Gulf side or the Pacific side. But it's been sitting in a place where it's been blocking a lot of that. And so one of the things is that because of the warm temperatures, and this is in general, the ocean temperatures have been warming on the equator. It's actually making the this large scale pattern in the Earth. We have to look at it kind of big scale, not just a small area, but it's called the Hadley cell, and it's making that more vigorous. And that actually is actually making the high pressure in the mid latitudes actually stronger, because the Hadley cell is a circulation that goes through the vertically up in the equator and then down from the mid latitudes and creates a high pressure system right around 30 degrees north. And it's actually making that a little stronger over time. And it's sort of a climate change people have been looking at in terms of the models, and seeing that as a strengthening over time. So it's one of those fingerprints that we can see kind of panning out. I mean, it's sort of if you're not sure it's climate change is here, this is one of those cases where it's like it's a confirmation of what we've been seeing, what people have been seeing and telling folks a long time through models and empirical models that yeah, we're actually seeing this pan out during our monsoon, and it's not like this is 1 year. We've seen this develop over several years, and it's actually in the last 15 years. So it's sort of this pattern shift, and I mean, there's other things that go on with the Pacific Ocean, but it's in general this longer term, big scale change that we're seeing is a drying. The dry areas get drier and more erratic. So yeah, I mean, that's all I can say. We could probably talk more about it at the 22nd webinar, but that's pretty much it.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions folks would like to add in to the question box or chat box, or if you raise your hand, I will see you. See. I see people saying thank you. This person said, I'm really interested in jet stream and atmospheric circulation research, so that really helped me. So that's great. I'm not seeing any more questions right now. Are you seeing anything, Joel, on your side?
No, I haven't seen any more come through than the one you've asked. So I think we might be good.
All right, then we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much, Dave. Always super informative. And thank you everyone for coming and for participating. It's great to have you all here. If there are any additional topics you want us to cover in a future webinar, just let us know in the chat box, or you can see our emails right there. You can email any one of us. And we hope that this information is really helpful for you in the coming month. And we'll be sharing the recording with attendees. It'll be available on the Quivira Coalition website and the NIDIS website. Yeah, and please feel free to reach out to us, and everyone stay safe and healthy. Hope to see you next time.